Welcome to another live stream, everyone. Well, guys, Bitcoin has actually seen a very nice bounce after yesterday's panic sell-off, but is Bitcoin in the clear for new highs, or is this just a reaction rally before a further sell-off? Let's start things off by taking a look at my 4-hour chart here. Like I said, guys, a nice little bounce, right? We're getting right back towards those levels that we dumped from. That seemed like a catastrophic dump. Basically, retracing that entire move almost. We're not quite there yet. But at this point, I do still have some concerns on the market. I'm not going to lie, you guys. I'm not saying that all hope is lost either. I just have a couple concerns and I need to treat resistance as resistance until it's broken. So basically, I just need Bitcoin to go a few percent higher. My line in the sand has been for quite some time now, basically 127.2K. And until we end up breaking that level, unfortunately, that is still resistance at this point. That being said, guys, if I start bringing up some indicators, I mean, yeah, it's not great to see a 4-hour sell signal on the trend master indicator. I mean, it's been a very long time since our running buy position here. So, I mean, it could be a very large retracement, even if it's going to end up printing a higher buy signal. We could still retrace most of this upward swing here. So we're going to have to see. Obviously doesn't have to happen if we just end up basically flipping this resistance into support, printing a higher buy signal. At that point, I would have invalidation for a new confirmed higher low just based off this indicator strategy I use with the trend master, basically. So that's not so bad at this point. Like I said, yes, it's a sell signal. Yes, we're coming off a resistance level. So there is some confluence there. We have to be vigilant. We have to accept the realistic possibility that we could go lower. I'm not saying we have to. I mean, those of you guys in my Telegram, those of you guys who have been in my last couple of streams, you know that I have been talking about taking profits along the way, just in case this does get a reversal. At this point, it's a risk-free position, just like my long from down at around 108.9K. So two very nice positions either way. Beautiful to have a swing entry from both sides of this very large range. And, it's a very stress-free position to be in. So, and guys, with that being said, those of you who are interested in just trading the charts for what they are rather than, looking for those fundamentals, looking for tweets and that sort of thing, you just want to see more examples of how I'm pulling Fibonacci's, how I'm looking at market structure, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the market in general. Do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code and get into my private Telegram channel. And as well, guys, my partners at BloFin, just for a celebration of starting this new channel, the crypto trading channel, they are giving us, my followers, a launch promotion with special deposit and trading volume bonuses. So that is for new and existing members. So if that's something you want to take advantage of, there are details. That is shared in the Telegram. It's shared on my Twitter. It is shared here. So yeah, with that being said, guys, I mean, like I said, we have potential resistance up ahead. We're going to have to be cautious about that. And not only that, you guys, but we do technically have a lower time frame Stuber fib matching up with that same resistance zone. And something that's even more interesting to me is the fact, where we have this big red pocket here. I've been talking about that as my macro swing failure rejection zone, basically. If we look at that pocket where it is right now and zoom into the 5-minute, this lower time frame Stuber fib also has a swing fail zone that ends right at that same level, right? Just above 127K, basically. So there is some overlapping resistance confluence for some sort of a fake out right up to that level. For a potential rejection if we end up climbing up there. So if we end up back up here, I'm absolutely going to be looking for hedges short again. But we're going to have to see what happens. If we break out past that, you know what? Then at that point, my fibs, my range has been invalidated. And at that point, I will be looking to play the staircasing price action to the upside as long as it keeps staircasing. If we end up blasting right through this, set a higher high, but then lose our confirmed higher low, then I would start to have concerns again that maybe it is just a little bit of a more of a sustained breakout, fake out, and going to reverse from there. But as it stands, that's basically the line in the sand for me, is slightly above 127K. closer to 127.2, 127.3 for a little bit of wiggle room. But that's basically the level that I want to see the bulls be able to push through before I get too bullish at this point. I do want to see actually what the liquidations are showing. So here's another thing, you guys. So let's just look at this for what it is. I'm going to erase these fibs here. You know what? I'm actually going to erase all of my drawings just temporarily here. So what we see here is we see high leverage liquidation levels, basically liquidity in the market. And the market maker typically loves to grab some of this. We can see that on the way down, all of a sudden we started, on the way up, we had a bunch of liquidity. We ended up grabbing it. Then we went back to the downside to grab a whole bunch of liquidity to the downside. Then it started forming above us. So we go and grab that. We actually went pretty high on that guy, testing the all-time highs again. But notice what's happening now is we are seeing a lot of those liquidation levels to the downside. There is so much liquidity all the way back down to the bottom of the range. And as well, even if we do push a little bit higher, as I was just talking about that little swing fail zone, notice that there is this little bit of liquidity up here still. And notice what happens if I end up pulling this Fibonacci, that the liquidity basically ends right at my 115 fib. So, I mean, just another reason why I think it's possible that we go up to those levels again. But at this point, I don't see a ton of liquidity above that. As far as high leverage liquidations, at least, obviously, there would be lower levels. But typically speaking, the market makers love to grab that high leverage stuff a lot quicker. So that's basically why I'm looking at it here. And just to show you guys, I mean, obviously we can see where the liquidity to the downside ends here at this time. It'll obviously change as the chart changes, but notice where this is. And let's do the same thing. Let's pull a fib from our swing low and notice that, I mean, it's not all the way down at the 115, but it is a little bit below our lows here. Which would just be a nice little liquidity grab if we end up going down here. A lot of what ifs, guys, right? It's not like I'm holding on to a YOLO short expecting that we have to come back down to 107.5 thousand. I'm just stating the fact that there is liquidity down at that level, and it does line up with the range that I currently have pulled on this chart. I mean, so often we see, I mean, a lot of people love having their stops too tight, so they would have it just below the lows here. But so often we end up getting a little liquidity grab and reclaiming that level and then carrying higher, right? So at this point, I think it does at least make sense that we could go lower. There's nothing saying that we need to go absolutely parabolic or even to like 130, 140K from here. It's absolutely possible. That's the thing. A lot of people will try to tell you that they know what's going to happen. Honestly, as traders, it's not so much about knowing exactly what's going to happen. It's, to me, and I used to say this all the time to you guys, is to me, in the game of trading, it's so much more important to be able to react than predict. Predictions are great for an ego. If you have a big ego, predictions are great. If you just want to end up reacting and making money, and it doesn't have to be an exact top for a short, it doesn't have to be an exact low for a long, but if you can play those profitable positions and just take the easy profits, that's the name of the game. So at this point, do I see reasons for both scenarios? Absolutely. We have a lot of liquidity forming to the downside. We have broke some very serious structure here. So, and you guys know, if this was a typical Stuber fib, right? Let's just remove a few things here. Let's remove this indicator here. So a typical Stuber fib, guys, if this was a 5-minute chart, for example, basically I would be looking at this, and this should be familiar to you guys by now, but here's our high. We actually went slightly higher high, right? And that means the lowest point between the two, that's our confirmed higher low. The fact that we broke that level, that's a bearish signal in my books because we lost a higher low. However, that doesn't necessarily mean short right now, right? I mean, the easy short was up at that liquidity zone that I've been pointing out for weeks at this point. And from there, once we end up breaking that structure to the downside, that's where a lot of people would generally start to short, because everybody loves playing the breakouts, because FOMO is a serious problem for most traders. So a lot of people would start shorting on the breakout. But it's a very real possibility that we end up getting some sort of a retest of resistance. Obviously, it could even break out. But at this point, the fact that we have that bearish structure break, that's where I start to look for resistance starting at the 786, right? So a lot of people would say, oh, we're going back to all-time highs. This is where they start getting FOMO. This is where they start opening longs right into resistance. Whereas I'm looking at more so, if anything, looking at new short setups up in this level. Just honestly, and again, just like I've been saying for quite a while now, it's not even necessarily that I'm overly bearish. It's not like I'm in a panic to get out of the market, anything like that. However, it's just basically looking at it from a risk reward point of view. Whereas when we start getting up to this resistance level, I mean, even from the 786, it's just that Bitcoin only needs to climb a couple more percent. And at that point, I can toss out the range that I currently have outlined, right? On the 4 hour here. Let's just reload my chart to what it's normally set as. But basically, we just need, if Bitcoin can get back up to this resistance, that's the thing. As far as short setups, it's a very tight invalidation at that point, because we only need to go a couple percent higher to end up breaking that invalidation level. Whereas if people start opening longs up into resistance, I mean, your invalidation is your low way down here, right? So at that point, it's just a lot higher risk at that point for a potential breakout. And the thing is, guys, there can be a breakout, right? I typically don't like trading breakouts, because more often than not, you break a level, you end up breaking to the upside and you retrace, or you end up breaking support, you sweep the lows and then get some sort of a reaction before the trend continues. So, I mean, the market loves to chop around sideways a lot more than it likes to break out in one single direction. And the large players are going to make that as painful as possible, as they came for retail traders such as ourselves. So that's why I like to play those breakouts. Unfortunately, that means, yes, I like trading pullbacks rather than breakouts, because although those breakouts do happen sometimes and it really hurts when you miss them, more often than not, it's going to be some sort of a fake out and retest some lows where you can get a much better entry with a much tighter stop loss. So that's more so what I'm into. And that's exactly, the Stuber Fib strategy that I teach every time I stream, you guys, and in my Telegram channel and all that sort of stuff. Basically, I'm just looking at it as a very systematic trade setup that, sure, it looked very bearish. A lot of people got very bearish as we traded into support, but I was warning about that up at this level already. I had a fib pulled saying that if this were a 5-minute chart, I would be looking for a pullback into my Stuber Fib pocket, this purple box down here. That's where I would be looking to basically start a long position. I never even got all my laddered entries. I had more down here in my swing fail zone, never got them. That's fine. Went to the moon. Just like at resistance, everyone started getting very bullish as we were trading into all-time highs. And that's when I took my short, and both those positions were uncomfortable to take. Support looked weak. Resistance, the price looked strong. That's very natural, and our emotions make it very hard to be a seller at resistance and a buyer at support. It's very hard to do that. Everybody knows you're in the game of trading and investing, you're supposed to buy low and sell high. You buy support, you sell resistance. But at the time, it always looks like it's going to do the opposite. And that's what leads a lot of people to get wrecked, that rather than waiting for confirmations and waiting for those breakouts and those pullbacks, people would like to just trade right into those levels and, often get wrecked. So that's basically what's going on here. Like I said, the fact that this 5-minute Stuber Fib also lines up with that swing fail zone once again, even if we get some sort of a climb, I'm going to start getting very cautious again, even a little bit bearish at my resistance levels, just because, again, invalidation is so tight. I would leave a little wiggle room above this, above 127.3K if looking for a new position, basically. But yeah, basically, I would rather be looking for short opportunities at resistance, because if it's going to play out, that's a very large move to the downside that I was talking about as far as liquidity and that sort of thing. So that's where your risk reward, although it may not play out, when looking for the better setup, I would way rather be a seller at resistance. So that's kind of what I'd be looking for right now. One thing to consider is that basically right now, retail is still short heavy, right? This red line to the upside, that's retail shorts. The greens is retail longs here. So we can see that they are short heavy at this time. Currently sitting at about 59% short, 41% long as far as retail goes. However, it does also look like we're starting to see those emotions come into play where the retail shorts are starting to drop off and we're seeing longs starting to try and form some sort of a recovery. And typically speaking, when we see retail longs going to the upside, notice that we end up getting that bearish move here, just like up here, right? When they were building longs, the whole time that the green is building up, notice that the price was dropping to the downside. And as soon as retail started shorting, the shorts are starting to come in and we start climbing, right? So at this point, it looks to me like retail is starting to be trying to long these dips. And that could just be fuel for the fire to go to the upside, to the downside. If they remain short heavy, if we see this red line staying up above, we don't end up getting that cross on the long short ratio, anything like that. At that point, basically, if retail stays short heavy and keeps trying to short this resistance, that is the opportunity for a very large short squeeze. And at that point, I could see this market continuing to the upside. And that's exactly why, as bearish as I want to be at resistance, I'm still always open to the idea of being wrong on a trade setup idea. And that's why I have very clear invalidations, just so that I can keep my head on straight. Ethereum at this point, I love to see that we reclaimed the Trendmaster 4-hour buy trend here. Again, Ethereum, much like Bitcoin, we just do have some work ahead of us, right? We ended up getting rejected at that Stuber fib box that I laid out ahead of time. So, at this point, it is a little bit risky, and even with the Trendmaster as well, this buy signal, although we're currently reclaiming it, it is a lower buy signal. So if we end up losing it again and printing a lower sell signal on the Trendmaster, I would have very serious concerns about Ethereum at that point, but we're going to have to see what happens. Solana, kind of the same thing, except I would actually say Solana looks a little bit better. We never did end up losing that upward trending buy signals on the 4-hour, held that Stuber fib that I'd mentioned well in advance. Hit that 786, hit my first 2 targets, caught the resistance of that, or I shouldn't say I caught it, but basically the price caught resistance here at the second Stuber fib target, got a little pullback, but already trying to find some sort of a recovery. So Solana doesn't look too bad to me. It obviously gets risky right now as we're trading right into resistance again, but I don't think all hope is lost for Solana. And honestly, meme coins in general, or not even meme coins, just altcoins in general. I've been saying for months at this point that I am actually more bullish on altcoins than I am with Bitcoin, just because of the phase of the cycle we're in. Typically, I'm way more bullish on Bitcoin long term. I think altcoins are just a way to accumulate more Bitcoin, basically. But usually at the end of a cycle is when altcoins really outperform Bitcoin, and specifically when we end up seeing basically something like this, right? When we end up getting our footing and Bitcoin ends up, bouncing 3%. Let's just check what Ethereum did in the same amount of time. From where we bottomed here. Why is this not going? Ethereum performing very similar to Bitcoin right now. Let's check what Solana is doing. Solana is actually up almost double what Bitcoin and Ethereum are up. Solana since bottoming is up about 5.5%, whereas Bitcoin and Ethereum are closer to 3%. Hype as well, trying to find some support here. I've been talking about this one a little bit in my last couple of streams. It got a nice little 5% bounce as well. I still think it's very possible that Hype ends up coming a little bit lower, closer to that $42.25 level, just because that's where I have a nice looking Stuber fib set up there. Obviously invalidated basically below $37.90. But yeah, at this point, I just feel better about altcoins than I do about Bitcoin, because generally speaking, at the end of a market cycle, Bitcoin ends up topping, forming some sort of a distribution range. And that gives altcoins a time to really shine, basically, as long as, nothing spooks the entire market. Typically speaking, altcoins will perform well at the end of the cycle. So let me just catch up on the chat. Good to see you here, my friends. Those of you who do appreciate these live streams and are appreciating the new channel and me sharing some of my favorite trade strategies with you guys and all that sort of good stuff, please make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But those likes really go a long way for the algorithm right now. This is such a new channel, so I seriously appreciate it. And guys, I obviously recognize that the same group of people continues to show up for these live streams. So I really appreciate you guys. You guys obviously enjoy what I have to say. You are looking at the charts for what they are rather than the hopium, but also rather than just being in total panic. I'm trying to be the voice of reason in the market and just looking at the charts for what they are. So again, thank you for being here with me. And if you do love being a part of these live streams, do me a favor, hit that like button. But yeah, guys, what else can we find here? I think realistically, that's mostly what I wanted to talk about today. I do want to bring up the Trendmaster on the 5-minute just to look at the lower time frames. Although we currently have a sell signal on the 5-minute Trendmaster, notice that we have higher trending buy signals at this point and higher trending sell signals as well. So far on the 5-minute, we are still holding on to a bit of an uptrend. And this is exactly why I'm saying to be a little bit careful right now, because we could end up climbing higher and getting up towards our macro resistance levels again, basically. Well, macro and micro, they actually overlap, and that's beautiful confluence to have. I'm actually curious, does the ALGO Master... The ALGO Master has a totally different fib pulled. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that one. I don't really want to play the uptrend on a new trade right now. But the Trendmaster, since we had this higher buy signal, it's basically pulling that fib from the pivot point we got for that higher buy signal. So there is some confluence there. We could end up finding some support if we see a little dump here. Could start finding support around 122.2 thousand, basically. But yeah, we are going to have to see. We might even end up printing a higher buy signal right away. But again, we're just getting closer to that range resistance on a couple of levels with a lot of confluence. So at this point, I'm not really looking for new longs. Like I said, I still have a chunk. I only have about 10% still running of my long from 108.9K, but I still do have a little bit of it there as a moon bag just in case, because I almost never close an entire position just in case you really get that home run trade. And honestly, I would already consider that a home run trade. Absolutely beautiful. But if it can go further, I want to ride that. I don't want to feel like I need to panic to get into a new position, because that's when you start making silly mistakes. So I love having that runner. If anything, I might look for some scalps. But at this point, I'd rather either wait for a bigger pullback and let something bigger form in the lower time frames, or I want to see us invalidate my bearish theories above 127.2K. And from there, I can start looking for those pullbacks to long. So it's not that I'm perma bear. It's not that I'm stuck in stew bear mode right now. It's just that at this point, I'm open to the idea of something very bearish happening. I'm basically, at this point, I have mixed feelings about the markets. Like I said, with the long short, we're going to have to see what happens with the long short ratio. And we just have to see if the bulls are able to push through resistance. Like was glitching like a mofo there. The like button. Good to see you here, Plumbus. Good to see you here, Hurley. Good to see you here, Dan Rab and Habu. Love to have you guys in these live streams all the time. Thank you once again for being here. And yes, of course, if you could, please do me that solid. Hit that like button, Because guys, I think that's about all I actually wanted to go over today. I just wanted to give this little warning that yes, it's nice that we're seeing a nice bounce. Just be cautious as we start getting towards resistance again for some sort of a retest. The market's at a very interesting place right now. Basically, we are at a make or break point that we are either going to break this 4-year cycle, or we are about to do the exact same thing that Bitcoin has done the last couple of cycles. So, yeah, that being said, my friends, hopefully you guys did find this stream useful today. If so, please be sure, once again, one last time, please hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss these live streams. And as I mentioned, if you want access to my private Telegram channel where I share some of my favorite trading strategies, trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the market in general, there is a scannable QR code as well as a link in the description down below. And of course, my partners at BloFin currently giving my followers this beautiful promotion here to celebrate the launch of this new live stream channel. So if you want to take advantage of that, there are the details. And with that, my friends, thank you so much for being here with me once again. I have other stuff on the go tomorrow. I will not be streaming, but I'll probably be back Friday or Saturday, something like that. We will see. But for those of you who want more live updates, you know where to find me. I will be in the Telegram. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.